Some mountains forgive mistakes. Others are the kind where a single second decides everything. Lila Peak in the Karakoram is one of the latter. It was there that a German athlete who had traded biathlon for mountaineering went in the summer of 2025. This summit would be her last. The events unfolded very recently, but it is already possible to reconstruct a full picture of what happened. Let's start with the backstory. Laura Dahlmeier belonged to the elite of German sports and was among the best biathletes on the planet. The 2018 Olympics brought her double gold, victories in the sprint and mass start. 7 world titles, the World Cup in 2016 and 2017, her track record is impressive. She remains the only athlete in the sport's history to win 5 gold medals at a single world championship, and the only one to win all individual races at the World Championships 2 years in a row. When you hit a target in 30° below zero cold with a heart rate of 180 and then start running again, that requires a level of control most people simply don't have. Laura possessed this control flawlessly. Her skill level was absolute. Her international recognition was unconditional. And then in 2019, right after her Olympic triumph, she announced her retirement. The decision shocked many. 25 is an age when a career is just gaining momentum. Her physical condition was perfect. Future medals were guaranteed. But a post appeared on social media. She had no more athletic goals in biathlon. It was as if she had completed the discipline and lost interest. Beating everyone was not a sufficient incentive to continue. When you stand at the top and see that all that lies ahead is a repetition of what you've already done, you can either walk away or burn out completely. Even during her career, the athlete was passionate about alpine skiing and rock climbing. After leaving professional sports, these activities turned into a new profession, not a hobby, but a serious endeavor. She qualified as a free-ride mountain guide and earned a rescuer's certificate. These aren't just pieces of paper. They represent hours of training on glaciers, working with ropes on sheer walls, simulated falls, and practicing the evacuation of injured people in conditions where every move can be a matter of life and death. She participated in real operations. She knew what it was like to pull someone out of a crevasse in a glacier when the temperature is -20 degrees. The wind drowns out your voice, and your fingers lose feeling even in gloves. She regularly went on expeditions. In 2021, she completed one of the most difficult routes on Mont Blanc, where the wall is almost vertical and every hold can prove unreliable. In 2023, she climbed Korzeniewskaja Peak at an elevation of 7,105 meters. At that altitude, there is half as much air as at sea level. Every step is an effort. Your lungs burn. Your head splits from the lack of oxygen. A year later, Ama Dablam, 6,814 meters, a mountain known as the Matterhorn of the Himalayas. Steep slopes, a constant risk of avalanches, icy sections where crampons scrape the ice with a metallic screech, and every strike of the ice axe demands precision. And so on. Experience accumulated quickly. It was impossible to call her a novice. She knew the mountains. She knew how they breathe, how they change, how they kill. In 2025, she flew to Pakistan for a major expedition with several ascents. The Karakoram is one of the wildest mountain ranges on the planet. There are no tourist trails, no mountain huts with fresh coffee and warm beds. Here, there is only rock, ice, and an altitude that does not forgive mistakes. On June 28, photos of mountains appeared on Instagram with a caption about training for the next major goal. The pictures showed sharp peaks reaching for the sky, snowfields cut by crevasses, and walls that you look up at from below and understand there is no room for error there. In her posts, she harshly criticized commercial mountaineering and a queues to the summit of Everest, where tourists form human chains, where guides literally drag clients to the top and they don't even understand the danger they are in. In one interview, she said, "In mountaineering, what's important is the spirit of adventure, solitude, freedom to choose your route, and athletic spontaneity." This is exactly what she was looking for. Not a selfie at the summit, but the feeling that you make your own decisions. You bear the responsibility. You go where others will not. But let's return to Pakistan. On July 8th, she successfully summited Gasherbrum Tower, 6,287 meters. Technically, it is one of the most demanding peaks, a tower with kilometer-high vertical walls, where the highest level of skill is essential. Imagine, you are hanging on a rope over a 1.5 kilometer abyss. The wind swings you like a pendulum. Your fingers search for a hold on the cold rock. Your crampons scratch the ice. Every move is calculated. Every mistake is your last. Laura completed it without any problems and prepared for the next outing. The goal was Lila Peak. It is worth saying more about it because the press usually just mentions some mountain in Pakistan. In fact, this place is special. The peak is located not far from K2, the second highest summit in the world, in the Karakoram range. And critically important, it is close to the border with China and Kashmir. Kashmir remains a disputed territory between Pakistan and India, where fighting periodically breaks out. The line of control runs somewhere nearby. Military patrols, restricted zones. This point is key to understanding the subsequent events. The summit is south of where the Masherbrum and Chogalisa ridges meet. On Chogalisa, by the way, the legendary German mountaineer Hermann Buhl died. He was swept off a cornice into the white void. He was leading. The snow under his feet seemed solid, and then it just gave way to nothing. Lila Peak itself looks like a sharp pyramid. It jets out like a spike with steep faces and impressive walls. Looking at it from base camp, your heart sinks. The mountain looks frightening. The slopes are so steep that snow barely clings to them, only ice and bare rock. Almost all routes on it involve technical climbing on near-vertical sections, hanging on a rope for hours, driving in pitons, moving from point to point. Your arms get so tired you stop feeling your fingers. Your legs tremble from the strain. But you keep climbing because there's no way down, only up. The skill requirements are maximal. Here is what Reinhold Messner, an icon of mountaineering, said about this climb in an interview with the newspaper Bild. Lila Peak is steep and difficult. Nevertheless, judging by her biography, Miss Dahlmeier could easily handle this mountain even by a difficult route. Praise for Messner is worth a lot. He rarely praises anyone. The man who was the first to climb all 8,000ers without oxygen, who survived in conditions where others perished. His words are a testament to Laura's level of preparation. On July 28, 2025, Laura Dahlmeier and her rope partner, Marina Kraus, also an experienced mountaineer with whom she had completed several expeditions, set out for the summit of Lila Peak. An important detail: in those days, Pakistan was experiencing an anomalous heat wave. Even at snowy altitudes, it was unusually warm. Temperatures that usually stayed below zero rose to positive values. The snow softened. The ice was covered with a film of water. Rocks that were usually frozen solid into the slope began to move. They started early, as is always the case in the mountains. While it is still dark, while the night's cold keeps the slope in a solid state, headlamps cut through the darkness, breath like steam. Crampons scrape the ice with that characteristic sound every mountaineer knows. Metal on a hard surface, a reliable grip. The ascent went well. They reached an altitude of 5,800 meters. As mentioned, the entire route is a climb up a sheer wall with high technical demands. Each point of protection is carefully chosen. Each ice screw is driven in all the way. The rope is taut. Carabiners are locked. About 300 meters remained to the summit. Nothing by the standards of ordinary life. But here, at an altitude of almost 6,000 meters, where there is half the normal amount of air, where every step is an effort, it is several hours of work. But at 5,800 meters, the decision was made to turn around and descend. Marina Kraus explains the reason. We knew we were technically capable. We were confident the climb was feasible. However, before reaching the goal, we decided not to risk it and to start the descent. The reason was the weather. Usually, after such a phrase, a description of a sharp drop in temperature, wind, and so on follows. Here, it was the opposite. It became truly hot. The sun beat down from the sky, reflecting off the snow, turning the slope into an oven. Rocks that are normally held in place by ice and snow began to thaw and come loose. At first, it was small pebbles. They whizzed by, leaving grooves in the snow. Then larger ones. The climbers noticed several large boulders fly past, heavy, the size of a human head or larger. They fly with a characteristic roar, hit ledges, shatter, and shower down as a hail of fragments. One of these can kill instantly, or maim a person so badly they become helpless. Fearing further rockfalls, they gave up on the summit and stopped their ascent. The right decision. In the mountains, the summit is not the main thing. The main thing is to return alive. The descent begins. They are roped together. Marina Kraus is first, meaning lower on the slope. She rappels down the rope using a descender. Metal grinds against the rope with a characteristic hiss. Her hands control the speed. Her feet brace against the slope. Her crampons search for a foothold. Laura follows her at an interval. Standard technique. One descends while the other belays from above. Then they switch. Slowly, methodically, safely. At an altitude of approximately 5,700 meters, the tragedy occurs. Marina Kraus recalls, "As we ascended, the snow became softer and softer, and eventually we decided to turn back. We were descending using ice screws. During the third rappel, a rockfall suddenly started." Suddenly is the key word. There was no warning, no growing rumble. Simply, at some point, a mass of rocks broke loose from the slope. They flew down with a roar, sweeping away everything in their path. I reached the next anchor and was belaying. Laura was following me. And then I saw a huge rock break loose from the slope and hit Laura, throwing her against the wall. The impact was terrible. A boulder the size of an adult's torso, flying at enormous speed. It hit Laura directly in the head. A helmet? Yes, she was wearing a helmet. But there are impacts that a helmet cannot save you from. There is a force against which plastic and foam mean nothing. From that moment, she stopped moving. I couldn't see any signs of injury from a distance. I called out to her. There was no answer. I saw that the rock had hit her directly in the head. Marina screams. Her voice breaks. The wind carries her words away. Silence in response. Laura hangs motionless on the rope. Her arms hang limply. Her head is bowed. At the time of the incident, Marina Kraus did not have the rope to reach her injured partner. They were working with 2 ropes, but between the anchor points was a gap of several tens of meters of steep, dangerous slope. For several hours, she tries to climb up to Laura. She looks for ways. She tries to traverse the slope. But the complexity of the terrain and the continuing rockfall, rocks continued to fall with frightening regularity, make it impossible. Every attempt to move up risks a fall or being hit by a rock. Marina realizes, if she dies here, no one will know what happened to Laura. No one will come to help. 2 climbers will simply disappear on the slope, and that will be it. She comes to a conclusion. The only way to help is to call for rescuers as quickly as possible. Unable to reach Laura, she leaves her where she lies after the impact and begins the descent alone. Here, it is important to understand the context. The 2 climbers are on a steep, technically difficult slope. The steepness is over 60 degrees in some sections. It is almost a vertical wall. It is impossible to traverse without a rope. Even with a rope, every move is a risk. Laura is hit in the head by a huge rock, after which she does not move and does not respond to a voice. Rocks continue to fall past Marina Kraus. She hears their whistle, sees them fly by a few meters away, leaving tracks in the snow. Any one of them could hit her. They were climbing in alpine style, that is, with a minimum of ropes and gear, lightweight. This is common practice, especially for German climbers. Fast, efficient, without excess weight. But it means no spare ropes, no large amount of gear for a rescue operation. Seeing that her partner is injured, the rockfall is continuing, and she has no rope, Marina decides to descend and call for help. On one hand, could she have climbed up to Laura to check her condition, perhaps provide first aid? Probably. It would have required several hours of dangerous, unroped climbing on a slope where a new rockfall could start at any moment. Would she have risked falling or being hit by a rock? Undoubtedly, the risk was high. Could she have evacuated Laura down alone? Of course not. Bringing a person down from such an altitude on such a slope is a job for a team of rescuers with special equipment. One person is physically incapable of doing it. Marina Kraus understood that the only chance of survival for Laura was an urgent aerial evacuation. Since both are German climbers, they did most of their climbing in the Alps. And there, the rescue service operates at a very high level. In case of an emergency, qualified rescuers usually reach the injured within a few hours, sometimes faster. In the Alps, it looks like this: a call, and an hour later, a helicopter is hovering over the slope. A rescuer descends on a cable, secures the victim. They are both hoisted up. They are taken directly to the hospital. The system is perfected to the point of automation. There, they have modern equipment capable of flying relatively safely at high altitudes. Out of habit, Marina began to act in the usual way. She tried to call rescuers as quickly as possible. Only she failed to consider one thing. This is not Germany, not Austria, and not Switzerland. This is Pakistan, and rescue operations there are on a completely different level. Marina descends further. Every meter is an effort. Her hands are shaking, not from the cold, but from stress. One thought repeats in her head: faster, faster, faster. The faster she gets down, the faster help will arrive. The higher the chance that Laura will survive. Lower down, she is picked up by other climbers and taken to a safe camp. There, she contacts coordinators and explains the situation. The rescue operation begins. And, as you might guess, no one ever reached Laura Dahlmeier's body. Whether she died on the spot, was injured, or simply lost consciousness is unknown. According to Marina Krause's description, death was most likely instantaneous, but there is no 100% certainty. And that means a question remains that no one wants to ask out loud. What if she was alive? What if she was lying there, motionless, but still breathing, still feeling? And with every hour, her chances were fading. As Marina Krause had hoped, a helicopter did not immediately fly for Laura, of course. Pakistani military helicopters could not take off due to poor visibility, rain, and strong winds. The weather in the Karakoram changes in minutes. A clear sky turns into a gray shroud. The wind intensifies to the point where a helicopter simply cannot stay in the air. Visibility drops to zero. Pilots refuse to fly, not out of cowardice, but because it is suicide. This meant Laura faced a cold night at an altitude where the temperature drops well below zero, -10, -15, and with the wind chill, it feels like -30. At the same time, she had neither a tent nor a sleeping bag. She was hanging on the slope in the gear she was wearing, a climbing suit, a down jacket, a helmet. But without protection from the wind, without a way to get warm, this means nothing. The cold penetrates through all the layers. The body begins to lose heat. First, the extremities go numb. Then, the heartbeat slows. Then, hypothermia sets in. And obviously, there was a serious injury from the rock impact. Possibly a traumatic brain injury. Possibly fractures. Possibly internal bleeding. Or perhaps all of the above. Meanwhile, 2 teams, 4 international-level climbers, 3 Americans and 1 German, most likely Thomas Huber, as well as 2 local porters, try to reach her on foot. But it takes a very long time. From base camp to the point where Laura lies is several thousand meters of vertical gain and tens of kilometers of approach. You have to climb with gear through difficult terrain, in conditions where every step requires effort. Darkness, fatigue, thin air. Their progress was halted by darkness and unfavorable weather. You don't move in the mountains at night. It's too dangerous. You can't see where you're stepping. It's easy to miss a step, fall, or go the wrong way. The president of the Alpine Club of Pakistan, Qarar Haidari, stated, "Laura is still at a high altitude, and the chances of survival are 50-50. Her fate depends on the mercy of the weather." 50-50. This is either a diplomatic phrase or sincere optimism, because in reality, the chances. Their progress was halted by darkness and unfavorable weather. You don't move in the mountains at night. It's too dangerous. You can't see where you're stepping. It's easy to miss a step, fall, or go the wrong way. The president of the Alpine Club of Pakistan, Qarar Haidari, stated, "Laura is still at a high altitude, and the chances of survival are 50-50. Her fate depends on the mercy of the weather." 50-50. This is either a diplomatic phrase or sincere optimism, because in reality, the chances were lower, much lower. A head injury, a night in the freezing cold without protection, no medical assistance, this is an almost guaranteed death. The day after the incident, a helicopter flew over the area. It could not get close to the slope, too dangerous, too windy. But from a distance, It spotted the climber without movement, according to them, with no signs of life. It's unclear how one can determine from a high altitude whether a person is alive or not. You can't see breathing. You can't check a pulse. Movements. If a person is unconscious, there won't be any. Thus, a statement was made that she was at least seriously injured. Again, no one got close to the body, and the climber could very well have still been alive. She could have been lying there in a coma, in shock, unconscious, but with a still beating heart. And with every hour, her condition worsened. But the rescue efforts began to be rapidly scaled back. Based on the description of the severity of the injuries voiced by her partner, it was assumed that Dahlmeier had died on the spot. The recovery of the body was declared impossible due to the difficult conditions on Layla Peak, rockfalls, and bad weather. The rescuer climbers were turned back. They descended to base camp, packed their gear, and went their separate ways to their own expeditions. The proposal to use rescuers and equipment from other countries was not even considered. There were people ready to help. There were helicopters. There were specialists, but they were not allowed. There is one non-obvious detail here that is not mentioned in the press. Layla Peak is on the border of Kashmir, where hostilities between Pakistan and India still occur. By Pakistani law, only military helicopters can fly there. This is not just a bureaucratic formality. It is a matter of national security in the understanding of the local authorities. The border is a closed zone. Patrols, posts. The military monitors every movement. A foreign helicopter in this area is a potential threat. Reconnaissance, a violation of sovereignty. Climber Stefan Nestler noted in an interview with the TV channel ARD that the political situation complicated the rescue operation. He said, "This is a politically extremely explosive area. Only the Pakistani military is allowed to conduct rescue flights there, but this requires a certain permit. And a permit is a chain of approvals, a request to the ministry, from there to the military command. A check, a discussion, signatures, stamps. This can take days, but an injured climber has only hours. Therefore, it can take a long time for rescuers to reach the victim. Moreover, the risk of rockfalls in the Karakoram Mountains this summer is extremely high due to high temperatures and low precipitation. The rescuers were also at risk of being hit by a rock. The weather deteriorated sharply. Under such circumstances, another rescue operation would have been irresponsible. This story is reminiscent of the case of Natalia Nogovitsina on Peak Pobedi. There too, there were Italian climbers, Italian rescuers, Italian helicopters ready to fly to help. Modern equipment, experienced pilots, full readiness. But they were not allowed to participate in the operation. Instead, a Mi-8 helicopter was sent to the mountain, a machine that struggles to climb above 4,000 meters. Old, worn-out equipment, not designed for such altitudes. It crashed there, along with the rescuers. People who were trying to help died. In Laura's story, there were also helicopters and rescuers capable of bringing her down. But only the military could fly, after a lengthy approval process. And while these approvals are being processed, time is running out. The chances are dropping. Life is slipping away. In the comments, one often encounters the opinion, "How is it that everyone can't be brought down by helicopter? A helicopter landed on the summit of Everest, so everyone can be saved." But this is a misconception. Yes, a helicopter landed on Everest, once, in perfect weather conditions, with the best pilot in the world, in a specially modified machine. And it was a record, not a routine operation. The weather in which helicopters can fly is very limited. In the mountains, such weather is extremely rare. A window might last a few hours or even minutes. If you miss it, you wait for the next one, and the next one might not come for several days. Furthermore, such helicopters, and most importantly, such pilots who are capable of flying in the mountains at high altitudes, are mainly found in the Alps. Germany, Switzerland, Austria, Italy, perhaps France, and in Nepal, where there are many wealthy tourists who pay huge amounts for safety. There, rescue aviation is well funded. The equipment is updated, pilots train constantly. In other places, being rescued by helicopter at an altitude above 5,000 meters is more a matter of luck than a system. You might get lucky, you might not. It depends on the weather, the availability of equipment, the political situation, and a dozen factors you don't control. And even with the equipment, it's not at all simple. The helicopter needs to hover at a great height, where the thin air reduces lift. At 6,000 meters, there is half as much air as at sea level. The blades work at their limit. The engine roars. The machine trembles. To hover next to cliffs where air currents can throw it against the slope. The wind in the mountains is unpredictable. It changes in seconds. A powerful gust can simply blow the helicopter into the rocks, or flip it over, or throw it down. Then, from the miraculously hovering machine, a rescuer must descend on a cable. He hangs under the helicopter, swinging, and could hit the wall. He looks for the victim, secures them in a special harness. All this at an altitude where every movement is an effort, where there is little oxygen, where it's cold, windy, and dangerous. Then both are hoisted back up. The cable tightens. The winch works. And all this time, the helicopter must remain in place, not drift, not fall. The pilot works at the limit of concentration. The slightest mistake is a catastrophe. It is suggested to look again at photos of real peaks, for example, Lila Peak. These are not the gentle hills that children draw in pictures. These are very steep slopes, almost vertical walls, sharp ridges. Show me a place on this peak where a helicopter could land, or even just hover safely. There are no such places. The rescue operation was called off on the evening of July 29, just one day after the incident, even though Laura might have still been alive. The decision was made quickly, perhaps too quickly, but who can judge? On July 30, 2025, Laura Dahlmeier's manager announced her death and read her will. He said, Laura Dahlmeier expressed a written wish that in such a case, no one should risk their life for her rescue. In this case, her wish was to remain on the mountain. This is also in the interest of the relatives, who strongly request that Laura's last will be respected. The will was written in advance. Many professional mountaineers do this. They know the risks, they know what can happen, and they leave instructions just in case. Thus, Laura Dahlmeier remained forever in the mountains. Sie war 33 Jahre alt. Ein Alt, wenn life ist just Antfolding. Dekaden von Opportunitäten, Discoveries und Essenz lägen erhäht. Everything was cut short in einer Sekunde. Kletterer Thomas Huber, der an den Rettungsarbeiten teilnahm, adete aus, dass es keine Anläufe geben werde, Annas Remains zu bergen. Er sagte, solch eine Operation wäre riskant für die Rescuers und wir alle nur, dass Laura würde nie haben wollen, dass sie war eine Mountain Girl und nun sie rest auf einem beautiful mountain. Beautiful words. Perais even true, but behind them there is still a sense of bitterness. Because resting on a beautiful mountain ist ein Euphemismus. Die Realität ist dies. Der Body liegt auf einem Slope, slowly freezing, becoming part of the landscape. In Jahren, all das wird leihen, Arbones und Gier. Bundespräsident Frank-Walter Steinmeier stätete, "Like many in our country, I was worried for her until the very end and hoped she could be saved after the tragic accident during her climb in Pakistan." Laura Dahlmeier was an ambassador for our country to the world, an example of a peaceful, joyful, and just life without borders. This is how she will be remembered in our country. But behind them is real grief. The country lost a hero. A family lost a daughter. Friends lost a person with whom they climbed mountains, laughed around a campfire, shared plans. She willed to remain in the mountains. This all sounds beautiful, even romantic. But in Pakistan, there is a practice of bringing bodies down from the peaks. The authorities do not like it when deceased foreigners remain on their territory. It's bad for their reputation, bad for tourism. So it's quite possible her last will may not be fulfilled, and she will be brought down. In a year, in two, when the weather permits, when people are found who are willing to do it for money. Although she lies in a very inaccessible place, and perhaps it will indeed be impossible to reach her. Then she will remain there forever. If we compare this story with the story of Natalia Nogovitsina on Peak Pobedi, both here and there a difficult choice arises, in which rescuers must risk themselves to save a possibly still living climber. In the case of Natalia Nogovitsina on Peak Pobedi, the rescue efforts lasted for 2 weeks, even a little longer. During those 2 weeks, the Italian climber Carlo Pinelli died. He fell while trying to climb up to Natalia. A German climber suffered frostbite. He lost several fingers. Natalia's rope partner, Roman, got frostbite, hands, feet, face. A Mi-8 helicopter with rescuers crashed. The machine couldn't handle the altitude, began to fall, hit the slope, and fell apart. 6 people were injured, including spinal fractures. Someone was left disabled for life. In the end, Natalia Nogovitsina could not be saved. She died on the slope. And to her death were added the deaths and injuries of those who tried to save her. In the case of Laura Dahlmeier, the rescue efforts were wrapped up the next day. They lasted only a day, and during that day there were no additional human casualties. No one died, no one was injured. Only one loss, Laura herself. What conclusion can be drawn? The simplest one can be read in the comments to such news. Why rescue them? They went there themselves. Why risk the lives of rescuers for those who consciously take risks? One cannot agree with such a conclusion. Everyone must be rescued. Because if we start choosing whom to save and whom not to, based on whether the person is at fault for their trouble or not, we will cease to be human. A climber fell. His fault? We don't save him. A tourist got lost. His own fault? Let him find his way out. A child fell into a well. The parents weren't watching? Their problem? No. Everyone must be rescued. This is the foundation of humanity. But rescuers must soberly assess the risks. If they understand that a rescue operation will lead to new human casualties, then those risks should not be taken. Because to lose 10 people to save one who has almost no chance of survival is not heroism. It is a senseless waste of lives. This is a terrible decision. No one wants to make it, but sometimes you have to. And whoever makes such a decision will live with it for the rest of their life. Will wake up at night and think, what if we could have saved them? What if there was a chance? To reduce these risks, the level of rescue operations must be improved. And for that, The level of rescuers and equipment must be improved. In Nepal, by the way, not the most technically advanced country, climbers are almost regularly brought down from altitudes of up to 7,000 meters. And this is done on a regular basis. There are private rescue companies that specialize in high-altitude operations. There are experienced pilots who know the mountains, know the weather, know how to act. In the Alps, rescue helicopters arrive to victims in as little as half an hour. The system works like clockwork. A call, takeoff, rescue, hospitalization. Everything is perfected down to the smallest detail. Hundreds of people are saved annually. There are countries and mountains where rescue operations happen really quickly and at a high level, but this is far from all mountain ranges. The Karakoram, the Pamirs, remote areas of the Himalayas, there, everything is different. There, you are on your own. There, help may not come at all. And this is a big problem. Perhaps international agreements on rescue operations are needed. Perhaps special funds are needed to finance the creation of rescue bases in remote areas. Perhaps more local rescuers need to be trained and equipped with modern technology. But for now, everyone who goes into the big mountains must understand, you are alone there. Help may not come. And the only thing you can rely on is your own skills, experience, and luck. Laura Dahlmeier understood this. She was a professional of the highest class. She knew the risks. She was ready to accept them. And she encountered something that no amount of preparation can protect you from: pure, blind chance. A rock flew in her direction, not a little to the left, not a little higher, but exactly where she was. A second, and everything was decided. That's how mountains are. They don't forgive, they don't choose, they simply are. And if you decide to go there, you accept their rules.